I'm on my way to the airport here in Indonesia, and today I wanted to show you what it's like to catch domestic flights here, what the logistics of it are, and how it really opens up Indonesia for the rest of your travels. And it means that going to some really cool places is quite easy once you know what you're doing. So let's check it out. So I'm actually in what they call the Pangandaran airport, and this is a very, very small airport. So things are done a little bit differently here. A lot of that security theatre isn't really the same here. They do still check your bags for dangerous items and all of that sort of stuff, but they're not, it's not as sort of, fluffy and serious. Also, you have to weigh yourself. So I'll be getting on the scales like this, boom. Yeah, I won't show you how much I weigh. They weigh your bags because the plane I'm coming on today, or going on today, is a really, really small one. It only holds 9 passengers. And this is pretty typical in very, very small parts of Indonesia, especially if you go into places like West Papua and so forth, a lot of really small aircraft. When you get into the larger airports for domestic travel, it changes a little bit. For this place though, look at this. This is the waiting area. It's pretty low key, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken, this flight cost me about 1.5 million. Now you can do this same trip by car, bus, train, motorbike, like a range of different transports. And it takes about 9 hours to get to Jakarta from here, depending on traffic. I mean, it could take longer. You might get a good run, but it's going to be a long trip and it's going to be fairly expensive. You can get a private car and a driver for sure as well. That'll take a similar amount of time, probably a bit quicker with a private car and driver, but it will cost you a lot of money. It will cost you several million to do that trip with a car and a driver because it's so far away. So I'm sort of buying a bit of time here, buying a bit of time in my life for a few bucks. And in fact, when you compare it to the cost of a private car and driver, I'm actually saving money. So it's time to board this Susi Air flight. Look at this. Small, I think it's a 9-passenger plane from what I understand. I've never been on one of these before. I think this is the smallest plane I've been on since, I don't know, one of those small propeller planes when I went to Coffs Harbour once in Australia. Look at that. Nice. Halo. Duduk bebas ya? Bebas, there we go. Oh, this is luxury. Look at that. Oh. This is low. Very cool seats down here. So it's a 1-1 configuration. Look at that. Just checking the fuel level, I think, or I don't know, I'm getting a fuel sample or something like that. Now you can see straight through to the cockpit over there. Because of the seating configuration, basically everyone gets a great view on this plane. Everyone gets an aisle seat, everyone gets a view out the window. And it's really interesting. You feel the air around the aeroplane pushing the plane around, like it's quite bumpy and quite, I don't know, you can sort of feel it doing these ones. It's a lot different to a normal aeroplane, let me tell you, these small aircraft. First time I've been in one so small. So if you get lucky on this aeroplane, what you can do, you can actually sit in that front right seat. Because on the plane, there's only one pilot, and then the front right's just a normal passenger. It travels about 250 kilometres an hour. So when you're going sort of as the crow flies, you actually get from somewhere like Pangandaran or Batu Karas, where I took off from, to Jakarta in only about an hour. Like, it's really quick. On this plane, there's no toilet, but the thing about it is it's almost like a joy flight. Because you don't fly very high, you get to see a really good view of all the areas of West Java that if you're in a normal passenger aircraft, you're flying way too high to see what's going on. But here you can see all the rivers and the little villages and the roads and so forth, and it's just nice to look out the window. If you're one of those people who loves to look out the window on an airplane and I'm one of those, this is just an unbelievable trip. And it's sort of worth coming and just doing the flight anyway, just for the flight's sake, even if you're going to Pangandaran or Batu Karas, which you probably would do anyway. You should try it out. good thing about checking in your luggage here is that you just go to the boot of it, pick it up and just go. Like it's not like you're waiting around for an hour for the bag to get delivered to the terminal and that sort of stuff. I've got to try and get a plane back to Bali now, and I haven't booked anything because I didn't really know how this flight was going to go. But there's no flights from this airport until 3:30 in the afternoon. So I was thinking about maybe nicking across to the other airport and getting a flight from there, but I'm not even sure about that because that means navigating Jakarta traffic in a cab. I think I might do it anyway, to be honest. And maybe when I get to the airport in Jakarta, just book on the spot. That might be the way to go, I think. So even if I get stuck in traffic, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to lose my ticket. But this is sort of like domestic style here in Halim. Yeah, Halim's an older school, smaller airport. Very convenient for that high-speed rail that goes to Bandung, and very convenient if you want to catch a flight down to Batu Karas. And it does have connections to Bali, but not as many flights as the big airport, Soekarno-Hatta. So I've just arrived in Soekarno-Hatta Airport, and I'm just going to stop in and have a bite to eat and something to drink. I've got about an hour and a half wait. If I'd waited at the other airport for a flight, it was only 4 hours wait, so I thought I'd nick across town. I saved myself probably, I don't know, an hour and a half, and it cost me a little bit extra money, but I just can't be bothered waiting, basically. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you around this airport, the domestic side of this airport, and you're going to be surprised about how totally normal it is to fly around here in Indonesia. One of the things about it is that it really opens up another world to you when you start getting comfortable cruising around domestically in Indonesia, especially if you fly into Bali. You can connect to so many different places. It's pretty easy. Now, this is going to sound a little bit silly for some people because if you're well travelled, you probably know all the answers to all this, but I just wanted to make it really clear so that everyone knows how normal it is to travel domestic. So basically, it's the same as everywhere else in the world. There's no passport control. You roll up at an airport that looks like this, ultra modern. Well, it depends which terminal you're in as well, but generally just roll up 30 minutes or 45 minutes before, depending on your airline and the airport, and you roll through. I use my passport for ID, but there are other IDs that you can use, but just use your passport, go through. There's no immigration, of course, and it's all pretty easy, really. In Bali, the airport, domestic airport, is in the same sort of area. It's actually the old international terminal. They switched it around. For booking, I use an app called Travel Locker. You can download that and pay by credit card. That's the one I've used a lot. There are other ones you can use as well. You can use trip.com or a few other different ones, or you can go directly to airline sites themselves. Or you can go straight to the airport and buy one at a ticket counter at the airport. So if you're sort of planning on going on a trip somewhere else in Indonesia, it's as easy as just getting online and booking a few tickets. It's not very difficult at all. When you get out of the airport, that's when the real fun happens, because if you haven't arranged your own transport, then you're going to be looking at how am I going to get a cab to where I'm going, or do I go and get a car and a driver and negotiate straight with the guy, or that sort of thing. The other thing is that it does get a little bit more expensive, like on Friday nights, like it might in many Western countries as well. So you've got to pick your days, just pick a cheaper day. And Saturdays and weekends in general, and obviously public holidays, not only are they more expensive to travel on, they're busier, and the destinations that you might be going to might be really crowded. It's a real interesting cultural phenomenon that we've really only noticed for the past maybe 10 years at most, where Indonesians now travel a lot. Before that, not so much. You might get the odd person go to Bali, but now it's a big thing to do. Even if you don't fly somewhere, you might travel somewhere by train, by bus, by your own private motor vehicle. Even in a place like Bali, people love to go out on a weekend and go down to the beach in Sanur. Like, for example, Sanur now on weekends down at the beach is just so much more busy than it ever used to be. The new mall is really busy with locals, and it's not really holidays, but it's sort of like getting out of the house and doing touristy things. That's a lot more, that's a lot bigger than it ever used to be in the past, that's for sure. All of those stories lead to the next part, which is what happened when I first travelled domestically in Indonesia. So the first time I did that was probably 2004, I think, maybe 2005. I actually took a side trip from Bali to Yogyakarta, and my memories of that trip are just so crystal clear and vivid from all that time ago, mainly because it was just such a culture shock for me. I'd already travelled a little bit in Asia, to be honest,
But that particular trip was a little bit different. That trip was not long after the 2001 September 11 attacks. Also, the Bali bombings had been going on as well, so there'd been a couple of Bali bombings. At that time, people were just a little bit scared about travelling in general, especially if you're going to a Muslim majority island. And that fear was real. I'm sure there's plenty of you sitting at home now that sort of do have a negative feeling about what happened in the past with some of those terrorist attacks and that sort of stuff. And that really does play into whether you decide to come to a place like this. But I can sort of assure you that it's not like that. It's actually a very pleasant place and people are very nice. Some of those stigmas that we have about places like Java are just not right. They're not right at all. And Java is a wonderful, wonderful place to visit, and it's totally safe. Totally safe. When I arrived in Jakarta, I actually booked into a really, really nice hotel. I think, back in the day, it cost me like $90 a night or something like that. And it was just like one of the best hotels I'd ever stayed in. It came with this huge buffet breakfast in a busy part of town. I remember walking out from the hotel for the very first time. It was night time. And there was Becak drivers out there and that sort of stuff. And the thing was with that is that, you know what, I wanted to explore. I was sort of brave enough to explore, but I was so scared. There was that nervous energy going. And I jumped on a Becak, negotiated a fee, and then he took me to all the batik shops and painting shops, and he was probably going to get a big commission from there, and there was probably fakes and all that sort of stuff. You sort of know that it goes with the territory. And it started just lightly drizzling a little bit, and that light drizzle was part of the mystique of the place, if you like. The guy on the Becak, an old guy, huffing and puffing as he pedalled me up the hill as the rain drizzled down at about 10 o'clock at night. Great memories. A lot of other memories from that particular trip, and Jakarta itself, I mean, a great place for a first place outside of Bali, and culturally significant as well, with places like Borobudur, the biggest Buddhist temple in the world, and then of course Prambanan. And the city itself, beautiful, lots of great food there, lots of batik as well. It was at that time that I sort of decided, hey, I'm going to learn a bit more of this language because I think I can get more out of this place if I have a few words. And I sort of did from that point forward. It doesn't mean you have to go and speak fluent Indonesian to go to these places. You might get a little bit more from it, but that's the same as if you go to Japan. Like if you go to Japan, you're not going to go and sort of learn the whole language, are you, before you go there, because you're going to get a little bit more out of it. You're just going to go there and enjoy it. Hopefully a few people speak English. If they don't, you'll get Google Translate out and you'll get by. I noticed in the comments of a recent video I made that someone said that they went to Bandung and felt quite isolated because they couldn't really communicate with anyone. And I can understand that. Some of these places that you go to, if you're on your own, can feel a little bit isolating. I've felt it before, but you can get past that. If you're with another, like a partner or a friend, makes it much easier. You can bounce off each other and get through it together. I'm making it sound like it's some sort of ordeal, isn't it, to go on holidays? But I can understand. The reason I sort of speak in those terms is because I can understand that going to some of these places can be very overwhelming if your only interaction with Indonesia has been through Bali, which is just so easy. This is my last video in this series of videos throughout West Java. I've been having an unbelievable time going back to some of the places that I remember from many years ago, the places where I first moved to Indonesia, where I learned Indonesian. And I've really sort of enjoyed taking you along for the ride and maybe giving you a little bit of inspiration, maybe an idea that maybe you'll go there yourself one day, or maybe get a car and a driver to whip you around to some other place in Indonesia that you've never been to before. I think it's worth it. Thanks for coming along for the ride today. Hey, and thanks to all the members who have recently joined up. I've really appreciated that you've joined up in such large numbers, and it really just helps do these sorts of trips. Gives me a little bit of a boost as well. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with all things Sonora and the rest of Indonesia. I'll catch you next time, and sampai jumpa.